And well, despite my job title, I've carried, this presentation as an independent researcher. As we know, and it's somehow represented on these tables, platform work has historically presented a series of challenges to platform workers in terms of inadequate labor protection and social security. And in practice, this means that many platform workers tend to lack when it comes to protection in the event of accidents and diseases. Despite this, what we've seen some developments, and some of those have been reflected or highlighted in the expert article of countries adopting employment insurance systems, such as the case of some novel developments happening in Singapore. And also in terms of occupational safety and health management, it is fair to say, that most of the initiatives taken by the variety of digital labor platforms have been quite poor, or when it comes to OSH management, there is clearly a room for improvement, and we've seen that from the previous speakers. And this can, in fact, be seen on the number of policies or of the absence of policies when it comes to specific occupational safety and health. This has also been consistently evidenced on previous EU OSHA studies. I think it was William that remarked how EU OSHA started the work back in 2014. And I think I was in Brussels when Professor Sasha Garven was presenting back in 2017, another important study on regulatory approaches to the online platform economy. As part of those reports, they really highlighted issues in terms of OSH management, lacking risk assessment, also access to OSH information, training services, and also lack of PPE. And I guess the upcoming expert article that will be published by the agency really provides continuity to those reports. And I think it also provides an up-to-date account of practical interventions, tools, and different measures. Quick note in terms of the methodology that was used as part of this expert article. So basically a rapid literature review, including both academic and literature, to assess the available tools and practices. And this was supported by a non-exhaustive analysis of narratives from annual reports, public statements, terms and conditions, and also developments coming from the proper apps, or also in terms of the workplaces organizational policies in relation to OSH or human resources. And as the previous speaker was mentioning, this is probably one of the key issues when it comes to the platform economy, is that lack of data when you go to those publicly available information or the disclosure policies from platforms. And this was also well supported by a compilation of initiatives and practices that were seen as relevant to the study. And well, of course, we couldn't leave this important meeting without mentioning, the impacts of the COVID-19 crisis. One of the things that the public health crisis has really taught us is that when there is a will, there is clearly a way when it comes to introducing or improving the working conditions, but also the working environments of platform workers. So throughout this challenging period, we saw a series of interventions that were applied or deployed by digital labor platforms. So many of those were in relation to appropriate safety considerations, such as social distancing or safe provision services, but also in terms of providing PPE to platform workers, or changes in the number of policy. But also What we also saw is like an introduction of more specific measures. So in some countries or for some platforms introduced the concept of hazard pay. That's, I don't think, is something that is quite applied on a European context, but this is basically a wage addition for those employees working under hazardous conditions. So this has been applied, for example, in the US to sectors such as construction and so on. And an important thing, and I think it's mentioned on the table as relief fund for struggling workers, is that during this public health crisis, we saw examples of on-location ride-hailing and also delivery platforms to a certain extent on measures to improve, let's say, the financial well-being of platform workers. I think it's quite important. Here we're talking about reduced rental rates or support and help on refinancing loans, or even providing like free vehicle safety policies for workers. And I think this is quite important and something that also the expert article reflects, because it has some clear links with issues that platform workers operating in these sectors experience, when it comes to depression, anxiety, long working hours, but even suicidal thoughts, because they do have like debt or financial pressures. Many of these platform workers. Thank you. This is just a brief snapshot of what the expert article includes. So it's basically a wide scope of regulatory initiatives, but also soft policy and other measures of relevance to platform work. And here we're talking about initiatives that could be coming from labor inspectorates or OSH related agencies initiatives, but also, of course, platform initiatives. I think that these were probably the ones that we really saw, or we managed to do a proper record of the different initiatives, but also platform industry-led initiatives, social dialogue initiatives, voluntary schemes, or initiatives led by workers or from NGOs or other civil society initiatives. And I mean, it is for the reason that the next speaker, Mrs. Murray, will be going through an initiative, from a labor inspector targeted to online content moderators. And I think this is, apart from these discussions, on the EU directive or national policies, I think this is also the way forward, to really implement targeted approaches, that can make a real difference to the realities of these workers. Again, this is a quick snapshot of some of the summarized key initiatives that we've reported from platform workers, platforms, and policy makers that can really help to improve, working conditions and the working environments. So when it comes to platforms, it's all about the basics. So yes, covering work-related injuries, policies in relation to road safety or violence and harassment, provision of OSH protections, both covering the physical safety, but also the mental safety as well, and industry pledges and codes of conduct. I think we've probably all seen that, especially from the bigger players. When it comes to platform workers, most of the key initiatives tend to have like an informal connotation, and these tend to be associated to social media, chat forums, or even face-to-face interventions. And also when it comes to opportunities for workers to providing their voice. And when it comes to policy, public policy, these initiatives tend to be more focused on algorithmic management, as the previous speaker has rightly represented, but also they tend to cover issues in relation to working time limits, and we see this for ride-hailing platforms, but also on more general road safety protections, for the right of workers to be informed about technological changes. But it's also important to reflect on other interventions such as calls for evidence or public consultations. And again, I could refer to the example of that we've included in the article of Ireland, and this was as part of a public inquiry that they conducted on the topic of on the working conditions of online content moderators. I think it was pre-pandemic period. Thanks. And as I was mentioning, the article has also been drafted on a sort of like plain English style. We thought it was important for the content to be digestible, not only for technical experts and public policy and other key stakeholders, but also for workers and platform workers and platform operators as such. And these are some, I would probably call it like quick wins, both in relation to digital labor platforms, but also in relation to platform workers. So we see things in relation to ensuring detailed and transparent reporting on safety incidents, injuries, and fatalities. Again, things have been mentioned before, the lack of information. So especially things that might be happening not only during normal working hours, but also during waiting times, or during times that platform workers could be traveling to their work location. Making available mechanisms for OSH concerns to be express action and follow up, and integrating OSH features. I think this is something quite important, and we saw this as part of the COVID-19 pandemic. It is quite easy, for many of these platforms to introduce different OSH features as part of their app-based tools. And this can be from nudges, for health, well-being, ergonomic issues, and so on, but also more specific, like including risk assessments and so on. Then issues more in relation to online safety applications, but also things in relation to making readable platforms terms of reference, especially when it comes to accidents and things like that. As for workers, platform workers, some of the initiatives that we've mentioned before that can be really quick wins for them. As I was mentioning, we tried to make this expert article quite comprehensive. So we've also included a series of fictional stories and scenarios. So this is basically a number of stories and scenarios based on real experiences. And we more or less try to have a good representation of both on location and online platform workers working in different sectors. So I think something like 6 to 7 have been included throughout the article. So we thought it was a really good idea. Now, we'd just like to finalize this presentation, providing some general recommendations, and these are also included as part of the expert article. So these are for digital labor platforms. So here we're talking about providing effective access, safe mechanisms for platform workers, extending OSH considerations as part of corporate financial transactions. And here we're talking about things like capital raising, investment, and acquisition operations. So we know many of the big players and even startups to a certain extent tend to be part of mergers or process of acquisition. So establishing some OSH-related due diligence as part of those processes is actually quite important, and we've seen that nowadays with the Silicon Valley Bank collapse that, for example, included so many gig economy companies, venture capital funds, and so on, and they probably lack from labor and, of course, occupational safety and health considerations. Transparency, we've talked about this, and other previous speakers have highlighted this. So this is basically the need for more public detail and transparent reporting of not only just safety-related issues, but also injuries, fatalities, and of course, violence and harassment. And we know that that has a strong gender-sensitive component. Introducing features and functionalities, we've already mentioned that. Improving or investing in more industry-specific occupational safety and health training, we tend to see that the awareness or I wouldn't call it really training when it comes to health and safety tends to be quite poor. So it's all about introducing sometimes blogs and things like that through the apps. So. And of course, prioritizing mental health and well-being practices. And I think this is something quite important. It's not just about the physical safety of these workers, but as we've seen, many of them experiences burnout or mental exhaustion as well. And in terms of the recommendations proposed for platform workers, these tend to have like a more informal nature. So here we're talking about the importance of online and in-person support and community gathering initiatives. So this could be happening through interpersonal, face-to-face interactions, but also through social media. I mean, I just challenge you all to visit Reddit or Quora and just type health and safety accident or how to act on an accident, and you will see how workers tend to support each other through those forums. It also happens through means like WhatsApp or other similar messaging platforms. Advocating for the right to be involved and regularly informed and consulted. Of course, this is quite easy to say, but difficult to be implemented in practices. But it means that platform workers really need to be part of conversations when new technologies are introduced as part of their functions. There is also a need to benchmark what really works well, and again, it's important to provide platform workers a voice, because yes, sometimes when it comes to research or other means, it tends to be quite biased, and we really need to take into consideration, I mean, platform workers' perspectives. Engaging through informal mentor or buddy schemes. So this is about platform workers better familiarizing themselves with the, let's say, functionality of the app if they are new to that app, the working environments, work design, and potential complexities of the task. And I think this is something that we know is probably happening under the radar, but I don't think it's being rightly collected. And of course, raising platform workers' voice and their first-hand experiences. Yeah, I think the article mentions examples such as the use of Instagram or even TikTok, no, where, for example, riders, they tend to have these GoPro cameras, and they document or they record their day-to-day activity, and then they are followed by thousands of other platform workers. And basically, as part of the activity, they represent what happens in practices. So if they are experiencing some work-related issues, it will also be represented. And I think that's another practical tool. So I think that's probably all from my side. I'm quite open to questions. And yes, the only thing I can mention is, yeah, I really wanted to appreciate you, OSHA, for the work that you've been doing for the past few years, and especially covering. And I was really happy to hear that the next sector that you will be covering is health and social care. So yeah, thank you. Thanks for the opportunity.